welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Thanks for joining us today in a wonky internet day. I know there's been a lot of outages out there. Hopefully, the feed's coming through okay. And excited to be joined by Bruce Wren, who's going to talk to us about transformational leadership, the power of principled leaders. Bruce, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Greg. I appreciate the invitation from you.
Yep. So Bruce is an award-winning executive coach, leadership expert, and the creator of the Bruce, was that Bruce to the Third system?
Bruce of the Third Power System, yes.
Bruce to the Third Power System, a proven framework for developing principled transformational leaders. That's just a little blurb about you, Bruce, but why don't you tell us your own story and how you came into the role of an executive coach?
Absolutely. I worked for a number of years as an executive in operations and also on the learning and development side. And I found myself drawn to coaching and specifically the aspects of leadership in a variety of capacities that I fulfilled in those roles. So it was natural for me to eventually get back into that. So I've started my own company. It's ACE Independent Consulting Services. We focus on a variety of things, but leadership development is really the area that I specialize in. And I've got a book coming out. We talked briefly about it earlier. It's called Bruce of the Third Power System, which is my perspective on leadership. It's going to come out early next year. It's kind of, you can think of it as the Bruce blueprint, as the way I would suggest people devise building their leadership skills, or what I refer to in the book as becoming, a leadership superhero. Because I think they are kind of like the powers. If you're a good leader, they're like the powers of a superhero. And so that's kind of part of the theme, and that's my perspective on it. I'm very excited to share that with people and see what their thoughts are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And congratulations on writing a book, as we talked about earlier. No small feat. Tell us a little bit about how long it took you to write the book and really what prompted you to write it.
It took me about 6 months. Notably, it was actually easier to write once I got my thoughts together. It took more time to really linearly lay out what's my perspective on leadership. And originally it was just going to be another garden variety book on leadership development. But the further I got along, I found myself relying on the Bruce system because it's something I'd always been thinking about doing, but it really came together when the book was in its formative stages.
Okay.
So the way it works is there's 4 primary steps to be a principled leader. First is branding. You have to brand yourself within any organization or people that you work with. It doesn't have to be in a particular organization. There's resilience, because there's always going to be down periods, and you have to be able to come back from that, which requires clarity and vision, and all these things that are developed during the branding process. Then there's understanding. You have to capture your people's hearts and minds is critically important. And so that's the understanding part. And then communication, which I believe is arguably the most critical component to being a good leader, is the ability to communicate with people in an understandable way and in a way that motivates them and at least informs them to keep them on board with the message. So branding, resilience, understanding, and communication are the foundation to become a principled leader. That means your principles are in place. You have clarity, integrity, vision. Then subsequently, the E to the third power, as I like to call it, is the ability to execute, the ability for engagement, and then finally empowerment. And so when you have the ability to execute successfully, you can engage your people, and then you empower them, then you become a transformational leader. So the first 4 aspects are the foundation. The last 3 are really when you take the leap forward to become a transformational leader. And all those aspects working together enable you to be successful, because with empowerment, leadership multiplies. People are able to convey the same message you do because they bought in well before, and they understand what that vision is because it's been clear to them, and it's something they've come to believe in because they've seen it be successful during the execution of the variety of things you're trying to get done. So that's my perspective on leadership. I go into other things, but most notably, those are the 7 components, and 4 of them are foundational that I believe are critical to truly become a transformational leader where you're making a real impact.
Yeah, I really like that about the empowerment. I always tell this story about how I figured out this great way to organize the Tupperware in our cabinets. I finally cracked the code and figured out all the lids and bottoms are all over the place. And I figured out a way to do it. And I trained my wife, who has ADHD and just throws things everywhere. And she actually got it, understood it, and then trained the family that she was doing some nannying for. So it was
Wow.
like, and I didn't prompt her to do that. So that totally speaks to what you're talking about with empowerment.
Yeah.
Let's just talk a little bit about, take a step back. I want to return to the foundation in just a second, but let's just take a step back and unpack this transformational need for a leader now. I mean, isn't it just enough to have a CEO? I mean, they're probably like scratching their head and they're saying, like, what else do I got to do, Bruce? I'm like hitting my numbers. Now you're telling me I have to be this transformational person. What do you really mean by that? The transformational leader?
It's a great question. I think that one of the things you learn on the corporate side is life is about more than spreadsheets and deadlines. That it's really about what, because those are just numbers, which are evidence of performance, good or bad. The way you got there is an entirely different journey. And so it really requires you to think fundamentally about what your goals are, but to usher people forward by benchmarking progress, giving them the feedback they need, and those sorts of things. So that's where CEOs, I think now, look, we live in divided times. And I think definitely the most divided times of my lifetime. And, ultimately, all of that white noise, I think, impacts what we're thinking about. And in addition to that, moreover, flipping the script, with AI continuing to evolve and play a factor in a variety of different ways, I think that some organizations are looking to leverage that potentially as a cure-all, as a something that's going to be able to solve all their problems because they'll be able to be more efficient. They'll be able to spend less on labor. It's going to point us in the right direction. And one of the things that I believe firmly is that AI is only as good as the person operating it. It'll help build you a direction to go based upon the information that you give it. So it's critically important in that world to have leaders who are thoughtful leaders and able to give the information in. The old thing about information, right? Garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
You think about what you're trying to do in order to allow AI to help you succeed and build a team around you who's going to be able to execute similarly because they understand what the primary function is. And when you see some of the great organizations out there that have been able to achieve incredible things, the common denominator is usually a group of people who see things the same way and they execute consistent with each other and cohesively so they can achieve shared objectives. So I really think right now, leadership, I would argue, is more important than ever before because all that white noise keeps distracting us from where we want to be. And that's what I tell CEOs all the time. I worked with a number of people in senior management positions and CEOs. It's a lot of pressure, and it's also a very lonely world. Most of the people you're around, if not all, report to you. You have to be able to synthesize. Are they giving you the information you really need to succeed? Because that's what you want. You want that crucial conversation or fearless feedback, but you're not always going to get that. And there's, in the back of your mind, you're wondering, am I doing this right? Even if you are, it's going to be something you're thinking about. So I really think having your ducks in a row about leadership and where you want to be and being patient with yourself is critically important as well to enable you to excel to your full potential. And I think that's the kind of stuff that gets me excited about leadership. And to answer the question you asked, I think right now it's more important than ever before because there's a lot of things that get in the way of us being able to achieve our objectives because leadership isn't always seen as the top priority because there's shareholders and recent, every quarter you report your performance and it's either a good quarter or a bad quarter. And that's all people want to talk about, that you really want to be looking ahead on the horizon. And that's really what transformational leadership is all about.
Let's take a turn for the personal here and delve into your background a little bit. Can you give me an example of a transformational leadership in your past? I mean, everybody's got a favorite teacher. Do you have a transformational leader that you point at, whether you work with somebody or someone you admire?
I would probably my most significant career experience prior, is with Regal Entertainment Group, overseeing the learning and development function internationally for what was for most of that time the largest entertainment company in the world. And so there was the founder of the company, Michael Campbell, and subsequently the only other CEO until they were acquired by Cineworld, Amy Miles, were both visionary leaders. and they both really cared deeply about the people who worked for the company and the betterment of the organization. And so I learned a lot from them. And they were the ones, when I was affiliated there, we put together a program on employee engagement to try and become certified as a great place to work, and launched programs which helped us achieve awards for diversity, achieve awards for business success, communication internally, et cetera. They really set the stage for all of that. So we went from a company which wasn't able to properly communicate to the people who represented us how much we valued their participation and how much they brought to the table. And ultimately, we became certified for 3 different years and achieved a number of notable awards. Once the leaders pointed us in that direction, I had a chance to co-chair the committee, which helped make that happen. And there were a litany of things that we did to help get us there. But all of them had to be consistent in relaying the message to our people. We care about you and want you to help us succeed collectively and want you to succeed individually. That type of love, when you see it come together and you see it result in not only intangible results as far as awards, but also the financial results in terms of performance, it truly makes you become a believer in
Hmm.
terms of what that can achieve. Moreover, when you flip the script and you see how some organizations, and I've represented some, who don't necessarily convey that message, it can turn ugly quite quickly. That it shows you that it can usually be the determinative function as to whether or not you're succeed or fail in the long term for most organizations. And that's really what got me excited about writing the book. I know it's a long answer. I apologize, but hopefully it
No, no,
conveys.
that's good. I love those examples, and let's talk a little bit about the foundation. I want to go take each one of those one by one,
Yeah.
and I do think it's really a value. I mean, we talk a lot about books on this show and how they can help you in so many ways, help you establish authority, lead to so many media opportunities. I think what you touched on is really important in that it helps you clarify your thoughts and lay out your framework in a cohesive manner. Let's go down the line because I thought each one of those are really interesting. Let's start with branding and tell us what you mean by that.
Branding is critically important because we all brand ourselves every day. The way that we perform, you mentioned organizing the Tupperware. That's an example of creating your brand. You are a perfectionist. You want it to be right. And ultimately, it conveys the message to anyone around you. This is the way we handle this to be successful. And ultimately, you're able to succeed in that. Branding is about, first of all, everything matters. Abraham Lincoln once said, whatever you are, be a good one. So really, it's about focusing on excelling in that direction. But branding is about creating who you are as an entity, but also establishing as part of that makeup your integrity and the way that you operate, and having a clear vision on where you want to go and how you want to succeed. When I was earlier in life doing coaching in a variety of different areas, I quickly found out the necessity for a clear vision to keep everybody on the same page. So branding is about integrity and vision, and determining who you are, as well as your leadership style. I tend to lean toward a more servant leader style, and to become transformational as part of that. Because transformational to me is a goal, an end goal. You only get there based upon your leadership strategy earlier. So branding is really about starting at the very base, the fundamentals, and deciding what do I want to be and where do I want us to go, and then getting your thoughts in the order to communicate that in an understandable way so people can both understand where you want to go, but also more importantly, get on board with it, because they need to get it. They need to get a flavor for it, if that makes sense.
Right, absolutely. And just to build on that, as a coach, are you helping people really understand and develop that?
Absolutely. We start with a gap analysis, the very first thing right out of the chute. Where are you struggling right now? It's kind of like a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's very similar, but it's on an individual basis. Because
Okay.
regardless how much authority they have, and you'll find this from very successful, having worked in entertainment, I had a chance to meet a lot of very successful, actors and actresses and people in heads of studios and stuff. Everybody thinks they could be better, you know.
Right.
So it's really about finding where they A, think they excel at, but also B, where do they want to try and improve, and then putting a game plan together. So that way they can help get there in a way they feel comfortable and they really feel that they've been improved in terms of their performance. The branding is the most important base. That gap analysis helps them establish evaluate their existing brand and establish where they want to take that, if that makes sense.
No, it's so great because it points them in the right direction. It hones, it clarifies, and then boom, all the decisions are so much easier once that's established.
Exactly.
What's the second one?
Resilience.
Resilience.
Regardless, I'm a huge sports fan, and so people look back. The most simple example to understand with us is, Michael Jordan. A lot of people are mentioning the greatest athlete of my adult lifetime. He's in the conversation for people who are American sports fans, at least without question. And people forget the times he didn't succeed, the fact he didn't make his high school basketball team, and so when he would check, one of his good friends beat him out he didn't make the varsity high school basketball team his
Right.
sophomore year. So ultimately, one of his friends beat him out for the last position. And so what he did is, as a professional athlete, when Michael Jordan would check into hotels, he would be registered under the name of his friend who had beaten him out for that last position on the basketball team, because he wanted it to remind him of a time that he had failed in order to be successful. That's a good illustration of learning from failures and allowing it to catapult you towards success. You can't forget those sorts of things in order to be successful. So it's really, in a nutshell, resilience. You have to have the ability, because you're always going to want to do better. And sometimes, due to circumstances even that are beyond your control, you're going to have difficulties. So can you come back from that? And if you have good branding and vision, that'll help you be able to achieve that objective.
Yep. The only way you lose is if you give up. There's
Absolutely.
there's a great my favorite Michael Jordan commercial is the one where he's just walking, he's signing autographs, and he's talking about all the shots he's missed, how
Yep.
many game-winning shots he's missed, how many losses he's suffered, and closes with "This is why I succeed." Love that.
Absolutely. Terrific commercial.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that's a good example, of illustration of that. And most really successful people, they've had failures in their lives that they look back to as something to help get them where they ended up. And so don't, it's an opportunity to learn, as we all know.
How about you, Bruce?
Mhm.
What any big setbacks that you've encountered that kind of come to mind that helped you, was formative?
Great question. I would say pivoting out of the entertainment space was a challenge for me. You know,
Yeah.
I pivoted away from Regal just prior to COVID. We'd come into a new ownership, and really, there were a lot of what I considered to be short-sighted decisions. I don't need to go into it, but
Yeah.
ultimately, I thought we were going in the wrong direction, and it literally led to their bankruptcy is the largest in entertainment history, which went down, about 3 years ago, because of these short-sighted decisions, which I don't believe the organization valued its people the way it needed to, and the way it had historically. And
Okay.
that's a prescription for failure. So I've seen the other side of the coin when you see it, that sort of happen. So coming out of entertainment was hard. I went into education for a bit. Originally, I went into family entertainment centers, but obviously during COVID, those weren't going to grow, because the whole marketing strategy is to get people together, and the bigger the better, and restaurants and video
Wow.
games and movie theaters, and that unfortunately it's still struggling in that sort of a realm. It's coming back, but at that time it was just a perfect storm of, it's going to be hard to fight these prevailing winds.
Oh,
So
sure.
coming through that transition, and that's what really led me to the coaching aspect, right? I think, having been through all these experiences and developing wisdom, I know you know where I'm talking about here, that, it enables you to learn. And I thought, I've got another act left. I'm fairly young. I'm in good health. What do I want to do? And I really want to try and help others to achieve success, what their vision of success is at all levels, whether they be mid-management, senior management, whether they be a spiritual journey they're on, or in their personal life with their family. Most of the best aspects of being a good leader are very similar to parenting. There's a lot of similarities between the two. So that's one of the things too that I think, being a parent myself, that it speaks to me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit, as we're talking about parenting, about understanding. And I'm assuming you're talking about empathy a little bit here, but you when you talked about understanding before, use some terminology around that. I mean, can you
Yeah.
review understanding for us?
Yeah, it's really about capturing people's hearts and minds.
Yeah.
It certainly involves empathy, and it also involves emotional intelligence and leveraging it to be successful. And which scientifically, that the research on that is fascinating. that
Yeah.
you'll really find the emotional intelligence is such a key component. Before the research really started to become more prevalently available, we always knew it was important to connect with people, but you weren't entirely sure why. But you can see through emotional intelligence, there's definitive scientific evidence about the importance of it. So understanding, and which obviously which is closely associated with and adjacent to communication, which is the ability to convey the message to people in a way it's understandable, in a way they're comfortable with. Capturing people's hearts and minds is so important, and it's typically the common denominator between good companies and great companies. Great companies have found a way to capture their people's support because they believe in the cause and they believe in you because of what you've done for them and success that you've demonstrated previously. You know, John Wooden, the great basketball coach, one of my great leadership, people that I look to, once said, "A failure to plan is a plan for failure." So, really, it's about getting all of that together, and that's got my creative juices flowing about leadership. What are the key components we look to, and the understanding, and then communication, which is really the ability to relay that message, are critically important.
Yeah, I feel like the understanding and the emotional intelligence can help you capture hearts and minds because, if you're open to what people are going through and you're empathetic, um, there's like suddenly immediately on your team. They will follow you, and you don't have to have the greatest program in the world. I mean, I feel like I've retained a few people here just simply by caring about them and, really listening to them and getting my own act together and trying to be more empathetic. Do you see that with your successful leaders?
Absolutely. John Maxwell, who I've studied for years, and I know John. I've been to private, events he's had for friends of John, he calls them, and, he pointed out a fact that it's been talked about before, but he really illustrated it in a way that really hit me. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And
I
that
like that.
message is so John is brilliant and just such a amazing. I personally find it the most beneficial leadership guru available today, and
Wow.
that's really the type of thing which gets you to think about it. And sometimes you're right. I mean, if you can still care for people while you're going through failures and going through challenges, that even hits home even more because it shows that you understand that it's about leadership is not a me thing; it's a we thing. It takes
Yep.
teamwork to make the dream work. All that's in the book. And those are more than just little quips. You have to be reminded of that. In an environment where everybody's become transactional, I think it's more about being transformational and about providing support for people to succeed. And you'll find they'll help you succeed much more so.
Oh, I agree 100%. So we went through the foundation here. I want to
Yeah,
touch on a couple of things here because that was a nice preview of the Bruce to the third power system. Talk to me a little bit about this statement: why transformational leadership starts with principles, not position.
yeah. I think one of the fundamental misunderstandings about leadership is it's about a title or a position. I'm
Uh,
VP of this, or I'm an officer of the company, which is great. I mean, that's about personal success, right? But it really doesn't properly convey what your role is to your people. It's about how can you help them succeed. So from a transformational perspective, it's much more important that you have a handle on where you're going and how you're going to get there. So the principles are critically important as a foundation so people trust you. They create trust through the branding, the resilience, the understanding, the communication. So that way, the table is set for you now to become transformational. And that's the E to the third power. All of that history of trust and connection that you have with them, where you've captured their hearts and minds and they believe in you and the message that you're relaying, sets the stage for you to become transformational. And then it's up to you as a leader to take it to that next level.
that that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean they're on board.
Mhm.
They love the vision. They're ready to go. And then you can go ahead and follow through with the threes.
Yeah,
What one last item here that I
yeah,
wanted to touch on? Well, actually, we've got enough time. We can go into a couple of things, but
sure.
you talked about how to lead with purpose, clarity, and integrity. Now, is there something you want to touch on here that's different than what we've talked about?
Integrity is a key component, an underpinning. They have to believe in what you're saying and believe that you believe it. And so the integrity, if that comes into question, then everything comes into question. Is this someone we can believe in? You see this happen all the time, particularly in today's world, because via the media and social media and everything, we're bombarded with information that tell us, how people are performing, and there's everybody's got a camera in their pocket, so there's that with filming of things, and so it makes us almost not believe our own eyes sometimes. So integrity is a key component, and then vision is about constantly knowing you have to clarify, because your message won't always be the same. It's going to change over time. So how do you conceptualize that and then relay it to your team in order for success to happen is a key component. Leaders have to constantly be thinking and reevaluating where they're going while still staying consistent with their basic principles and the goals that they've established for the team.
Bruce, what do you think about the leaders? I go on social media, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I see so many
Yeah.
CEOs who are not on LinkedIn. And now you don't have to be on LinkedIn, I get it. But I see them, these invisible CEOs, these invisible executives. Is that okay? I mean, do you think in a lot of these people, I'm especially in the manufacturing space, I see a lot of these
Mhm.
folks, and to me, I just think you're missing out. It's an opportunity missed. But I think a lot of people treat it more as a nice to have instead of something very critical. With who you're working with your framework, is this important? Is this important that the CEO is in the digital sphere and trying to communicate actively?
I think it's pivotal myself. I agree with you. But I also recognize what you're saying is correct, that when you have a high level of authority, there aren't a lot of checks on you other than maybe the board or something if you're a public company. So consequently, and you also are bombarded with people trying to make contact because you can materially affect their well-being. So I think there's a temptation in that world to maybe step back and not want to be as public and as accessible, and as a result, it can keep you from being exposed to the messages you need to get to keep succeeding. So I always, counsel my executives in the higher level of authority. It's even more important, I believe, to be actively involved on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is incredible from a perspective that when you think about the other various social medias we have out there, they get into controversial issues all the time and stuff. LinkedIn, 99.99% of the time, is just staying on message with something we can all agree about and doesn't take a turn to the negative, and which I think is great. It's incredible what LinkedIn's been able to achieve to keep it a pristine environment and keep conversations going where people from all different spectrums in life can interface and be able to have a dialogue about things which can be beneficial for both of them and have different takeaways. I love LinkedIn. I'm on there every day, and I think it's so important. And I tell executives that too. But I think it's also partially dependent on where the executive's at in their career path and the organization they're affiliated with. And that's where I think it's hard for executives if you lose touch with your clientele and what's happening out there, and you become insulated with people around you who become yes people, constantly telling you everything you do as well. I mean, I've met hundreds of Hollywood stars. And I think it's so much pressure on them. I interviewed Jack Black, Tom Cruise, a number of people when I was in the entertainment, literally many others that I'm not mentioning. But I think it's hard to stay in touch. And the ones who really break through, Jack and Tom are two examples of that. When they go to events, they reach out to people and they materially impact people. Tom just won an Academy Award this weekend for his lifetime achievements, and they had a big ceremony on Sunday. He's never
Wow.
been awarded the actual ceremony, but yet you ask he's the star of stars. He's the biggest title in the room. So, ultimately you see people like that who understand the importance to still reach out. It's indicative of the fact, regardless how big of a name you've got or what role you play, you can definitely be more successful if you keep it real and keep connecting with the people who you value.
Yeah, and I think, from a strictly a marketing standpoint, which is really my background, is You know, that connection, first of all, it's good for your soul, but also you're getting so many data
Yeah.
points when you are out there on LinkedIn and especially with your customers and your employees. And I've also seen people take
Yes.
a certain amount of pride in seeing their leaders on social communicating, being active. I mean, I just think people really like to say, "Hey, that's my company. That's us out there." And that's the CEO can make a huge impact there. Oh,
Absolutely, you see that culturally all the time. Oprah Winfrey, as a personality, constantly reaching out. A lot of politicians who are successful, the ones who seem the most accessible and are willing to have outreach to their people, are the ones who typically will hearts and minds. Is my experience.
yeah, I agree. Bruce, it's been awesome. We're at the top of the hour. If someone wants to get a hold of you and work with you, and also read the book, learn about the book when it comes out, how do they do that? What's the easiest way to do that?
Yep. BruceWren.com is the easiest way to find me. We're just doing a couple of tweaks to the website now, but I encourage them to go there. Looking me up on LinkedIn also. I'm available for keynote speaking, group facilitations, and one-on-one coaching. Love to do it. And then when the book comes out, Bruce, the Third Power System is the Bruce blueprint for things, how to be successful as a leader. I'd love it if people pick that up and hopefully they get something beneficial from it.
I hope it gets huge. I hope you start landing speaking gigs, and when you walk into the room, people are like, Bruce. I'm a
Thank you.
Springsteen fan, so that's where that's coming
I
from.
love
But
it. I love it. I am too. I am
yeah,
too.
all right. Bruce, thanks for joining us, and thanks for everybody for being on Thought Leaders Live. We'll catch you next time.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great day.